Netflix brings us another true crime documentary with The Ripper. It's the real-life story of the Yorkshire Ripper. Does this new documentary uncover clues or leave us scratching our heads? Investigators and witnesses recall how a modern-day Jack the Ripper terrorized the north of England during the late 1970s. I love how this documentary is told chronologically, so it really gives us a good sequence of events and helps us to get involved in the story. Sometimes documentaries bounce back and forth between timelines, and it becomes very hard to really get a larger grasp on what exactly is going on. And I love that this starts out at the beginning and takes us all the way through the case in order. Women are being targeted in the late 70s and up until the early 80s. The presumption is that prostitutes are the target, but because the killings go unheeded over so many years, all women become afraid to go out after dark. We get a lot of interviews from police and reporters and even some of the victims who survived. So this really paints a good picture, a well-rounded picture of the investigation and everything that's going on, including the social climate of the times. This is only 4 episodes long, and I think it makes efficient use of that time. Now, I didn't know anything about the Yorkshire Ripper going into this, aside from the name. And after watching this, I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on everything that went down, that who this person was, and all of the crimes and atrocities that they committed. And the first half of the documentary really gives us a good picture of the police investigation that's going on. We see how frustrated they are that these killings keep happening, and yet they seem to go nowhere with the clues. You get to see all of the mounting pressure that the police are feeling from the public, from other government officials, just from everything, as you can imagine, because if people feel unsafe in their own area to go out after dark, well, that's not a good thing. And for people, the police, charged with law and order and are not keeping that, well, it just doesn't reflect really well on you. But I like how in the second half of the documentary, the sheets are pulled back and we get to see under the covers where things aren't necessarily as nice and cut and dry and even investigated to the full extent that they should have been. This becomes a really good cautionary tale as to why investigations should follow the evidence versus trying to make the evidence fit some narrative that you already have established. I gotta say, parts of this story are very frustrating. It's really engaging, but the actions and the behaviors of some are just maddening. On a complete side note, one of the reporters who is featured in some of the news footage also makes an appearance in Shaun of the Dead. Remove the head or destroy the brain. I know that really doesn't have anything to do with it, but there you go. I think if you don't know about the Yorkshire Ripper case, then this provides some really good information and background and insight into everything that went on. I am curious, though, for those who know about the case, does this unveil other information for you? Did it expand or uncover anything new? Or is this all kind of just a rehash? I mean, for me, the storytelling is compelling and engaging. It builds kind of like a mystery novel, and I was satisfied with the info that I was given. I mean, I'm still frustrated by the case, but I feel like I have a good grasp of everything that went on. I like how this pulls in the culture of what was going on at the time. It examines how women were viewed and treated, and at one point, a curfew for women was considered. And supposedly that's for their protection. But here's something curious to consider. If it's a man who is committing these atrocities, then making a curfew for women to keep women off the streets doesn't really make any sense. It makes a lot more sense to keep men off the streets, because then if any killings do happen, then there's a very small amount of men who theoretically, if everybody's obeying the curfew, are out on the streets, and it narrows your pool considerably. But as it stands to limit women to go out, they can't go out. Well, now you just have the streets filled with men who are all potential suspects. In my head, that doesn't make any sense. Now, the documentary does go by quick. Like I said, it's 4 episodes. This is a good documentary to check out, especially if you're a true crime fan. From all of the interviews and the news footage that we get, I mean, it really does help to build a great picture. And I loved having stories from survivors. And I also loved some of the journalism that goes into this and how they investigate and how they raise some questions. Now, some of it is, we're kind of seeing it kind of armchair quarterback or looking back in hindsight at how it could have been done or how it could have been uncovered. But still, you would think that some of these questions that they raise now probably should have been raised then. There's no sex, but some nudity, some profanity, and descriptions and imagery of violence. I highly recommend that you check out The Ripper on Netflix. Are you familiar with the case? Did this documentary shed any new light for you? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for catching with me.